discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, so the confirmation of December the 5th county council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions of the minutes?
I'll move the minutes of December 5th, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? I think you're carried. Yep. Somebody over there is.
What?
No,
He's there.
He's there.
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Oh, okay.
For whatever.
Let's move down to H1. That is bylaw 19-046, DRT Park Amendment to Land Use Bylaw, Lethbridge Urban Fringe to be effective residential. Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. So for today is bylaw 19-046. It's for DRT Farms. They're requesting to amend the land use bylaw from Lethbridge Urban Fringe to Group Country Residential for a 10-acre parcel located just east of the city of Lethbridge on Sunnyside Road. Zoom out a little bit, you can see where it is. To the, just a little, about a half a mile north of Highway 3. The intent of the applicant is to redesignate the parcel so that they can create 3 country residential parcels. And they have submitted a conceptual design scheme in order to support their application. This application has been circulated out to the county departments and to all of our external agencies for review. And we anticipate that we will have a public hearing for this bylaw in the first meeting in February of next year. So with that, the recommendation is that first reading of bylaw 19-046 be read a first time, and so that we can send out the public hearing notices. Any questions of council on this application?
Any questions? Okay. Bob? Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's do I-1, and that's the 2020 fleet capital budget. Or everybody jump up and volunteer at once.
Somebody lose their keys? I think those are dates. Dates. All right, in regards to the fleet capital budget. So during the operating budget discussions and the capital budget discussions, one of the requests I had was for county council to essentially, I know as part of today's discussion, we're going to be talking about the interim operating budget for purchasing of fleet equipment so that we can have it in a timely fashion. What I would like to do is to be able to send out RFPs and RFQs for the different pieces of equipment that we are looking to purchase for 2020. So as part of this, I'm just going to read off the executive summary here. The 2020 proposed capital budget was presented to council on November 26th and 27th. Second budget deliberations was held on December 10th. Provide staff with the budget direction. Upon review of the budget, council provided feedback in determining the 2020-24 capital budget will be brought forward along the 2020 to 2023 operating budget in January for approval, with an interim operating budget approved in December. However, the Fleet Services Department would like to make a request to council for pre-approval of the 2020 fleet capital budget to ensure equipment request proposals are sent out early to ensure equipment is delivered prior to the construction season. So in regards to that, sometimes with the purchasing of graders or other heavy equipment, there is a 3 to 4 month lag essentially in delivery time from factory to when it actually lands in Alberta. That would tie in essentially at this point, right at the beginning of our spring maintenance activities and people essentially for the commissioning of that piece of equipment. So our recommendation is that county council proceed with the approval of the 2020 fleet capital budget in the amount of $1.865 million. Previous council direction policy, so as per the MPA, the adoption of the capital budget must be done for each calendar year, so this will be for the year of 2020. There's also the provision of having the 3-year operating plans and the 5-year capital plans in addition to that. Now, as part of, I think that comes into effect in 2020 itself.
It was last year,
Was
actually.
it last year, 2019? Yep. And any questions on the background alternative, or the background information? The other alternative as part of this would be to basically wait until the full operating budget and capital budget is approved in sometime within the 2020 calendar year. Whether that be January or depending on budget deliberations later.
Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with having stuff before the season, that would be before April, somewhere around there, or before that?
Yes, through chair to Councilor Vanderbeek. All the equipment would essentially be purchased, so we were ready to go for spring operations. In any given year, that could be March, or that could be potentially, typical is April. Sometimes we will get started on some stuff in March, especially with some of the culvert projects that we have this year. There's some other smaller pieces of equipment, like compaction equipment, that's gonna be used for doing some culverts that are associated with the irrigation districts. So we usually get that working on before the water comes on in May, and then anything that we don't, then we're looking into October when the water comes on.
So the equipment that they have right now, if it wouldn't come in on time, you would still be okay with the equipment that you have to be able to do your work?
We would still be fine. The graders, obviously, the graders are the 2 big pieces in this maintenance budget, or this maintenance capital budget. We can still use the existing equipment that we do have. There is some advantages to getting ahead of it rather than being behind it. If equipment is ordered earlier in the 2020 season, then we're not necessarily looking at their next price increase as well on equipment. So, other items such as the spray patching truck, that one would be probably active as soon as we could get it out and the weather was actually cohesive to that, so probably that would be the beginning of April based on the warm weather conditions we tend to have in southern Alberta. That would be for all of our pothole patching, crack sealing, and so on. For those areas, some of the other ones, I mean, we've got mowers and other light duty trucks that wouldn't be adversely affected if we approved it later.
Any other questions? Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, isn't there, usually you don't get the used equipment till the new stuff comes in, isn't it?
Sorry, can you just clarify your question a little bit?
Well, somebody is questioning, is that new equipment gonna be here in time? But normally, isn't it that they don't get the used equipment till the new equipment arrives? And if they take used equipment and if they don't have it in time, a lot of times they replace it with something they have in stock or whatever, right?
Yeah, well, for most of the equipment that is proposed here, this is all replacements for existing units. The one grader in question would just go to auction. So we wouldn't be in an adverse position though if it was approved. This would just allow us to get a little bit ahead of the game as far as ordering some of the newer stuff from the factory.
And just one question on don't know whether I asked it once before or not, but if I bore you, just let me know when you've answered it. How come the construction grader is cheaper than the divisional grader?
The construction grader will be a used model. So
Which, sorry?
it'll be a used unit.
Oh, I used.
Yeah, for a new unit of that size class, you're looking at 700,000 plus. There is with Caterpillar used equipment, you can get relatively good deals coming back on machines that are only, this one would be used about 3,000 hours, so it's roughly broken in essentially from that aspect. The line I have on a potential one at this point is from another municipality who purchases these for maintenance units and then rotates them every 3 years. So they have a very robust replacement program.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that county council proceeds with the approval of the 2020 fleet capital budget in the amount of $1.865 million. It's just a good idea to speed up the process, get the stuff, get the equipment here.
Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank
Don't
you,
leave the
Mr.
seat,
Chairman.
we'll do the next one too, I guess.
You bet.
Okay, let's do Ag Service Board Summer Tour. Rescind motion to host 2023 Summer Ag Service Board Tour.
Okay. So again, during our budget deliberations for the 2022 or 2020 to 2022 operating budget, a proposed reserve was allocated for the ASB Summer Tour at $50,000 per year for the next 3 years in anticipation of hosting the 2023 ASB Summer Tour previously approved by Council. Council discussed the allocation of the funds for the ASB Summer Tour and decided to reconsider hosting the event considering the current provincial economic climate. Considerable planning and staff involvement would be associated in hosting this tour and to be in the planning stages, which would require a firm commitment from Council. So recent hosts that have done this event have said 2 years of lead time for planning and organizing, as well as hiring a tour coordinator to oversee the event. So the recommendation that I'm putting to Council today is that due to the discussions we had during the operating budget discussions, that Lethbridge County Council motion to rescind the motion to host the Ag Service Board Tour in summer 2023 and have administration send a letter of withdrawal from hosting the event to the Ag Service Board.
Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've given this some thought again, and I don't know if everybody else gave it some thought here too, but you know, I still think we're going to be missing out on the opportunity to show what we have here in the county, and maybe some opportunities to have some more investment come into the county. And if we would do a better job, I'd like to put some extra effort into getting some more sponsorships and everything, because that's where the majority of the money probably comes from to pay for this one, if I'm not mistaken. So, and we're putting, like, then we'd only be putting about 150,000 toward it, so that's in these next coming 3 years, we put $50,000 a year. And I think with the $50,000 a year, I think that we could justify that we spend that kind of money to, in the future, maybe have some more investment and everything coming into the county. So, yeah, I hope that other people have thought about it too, and that we can have a little bit different discussion about the whole thing. I think that it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Do we have the motion number? We're rescinding something, but
The previous motion is under previous council direction. The motion was made July 4th, 2019 at a special meeting of council, and the resolution was 296/19.
oh. Okay, thank you. I see it there now.
Well, my wish is, and I don't mind saying it, to pursue it. Because I think that so many other municipalities over the years, they have been doing it, and there was always, great thing to attend, and the bottom line is, you do talk to them and what they do in the area, and if it is certain things they do, you ask them, how come you guys go about that way or whatever, and you pick up a lot there. And the thing is, us, for the municipalities in Alberta, we should know what the rest of them do, what they're up against, and that's the only way to pursue it. That's my feeling, so, you know, I'm with the Honorable Mr. Penderby, Councilor Penderby, on that.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I still like the idea of canceling the tour. I don't see future investment. We're making a tour for municipal councilors. If they're gonna invest, they're gonna invest in their own municipal district or county. We attend numerous conferences with other municipalities during the year. That's the time to find out what everyone else does. That's why they have all the social events and everything. To spend $150,000, $200,000 of taxpayer money to put on a tour, I don't see the reason or the payback for it.
Bob?
Well, for me, I'm sort of on the side of Morris and Claus, because I went to that Strathcona one, and I seen things that, I've never seen before. And you learn. So that's what I sort of would think we would need to, should do it, really do something. That's my opinion.
You know, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
You may?
You know, and, if we start this thing early enough and, we, you know, been discussing, you know, we should get good sponsorship, you know, and if we start early enough, I think we'll get them, you know, and let them know what it's all about or whatever, and I think we'll get them. The last time, when the county had it was kind of a quick thing to organize for what I believe, Mr. Chairman, you know, didn't it take only about 6 months?
Yes.
To get things together, so they didn't have the sponsors, maybe they wanted. But if you get the sponsors, you know, I think that's could reduce the cost by quite a bit. But the thing is that one that you guys did have, I was a little bit involved with that because I got asked to help out, and I thought it was just unbelievable, you know, and I wasn't even uncomfortable with it. But the ones we have been, as a consulate, I thought it was great. So I would like to pursue it, yeah.
Well, kind of taking a different swing from what we agreed to the other day, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah.
So, I could agree to putting it back in only if it had limitations on it. And they would have to be, that we would put no more than, say, $50,000 of funds from the municipality towards it. And you definitely need to use volunteers more than we have in the past for things like this. Otherwise, and certainly not to hire an event coordinator. I mean, that just eats up the money like crazy. There are a ton of volunteers out there. If they are not gonna come to the table, then we're not gonna be able to have it. And that's pure and simple. And I know that's relying on a lot of things, because sometimes volunteers are not as good as they turn out to brag themselves to be. So that is an issue for staff and the rest of us who have to work within that parameter. So that's the only way I would agree to it. Pause.
Mr. Chairman, the 50,000 you were talking about, you're talking about the 50,000 in the coming 3 years, so that would end up at 150,000.
No, I'm not talking about putting in 150,000, I'm talking the cap is $50,000 of our own money. If you think you can get the sponsorship to come up to the level, that would fund the rest of the project, I'm comfortable doing that, but otherwise, I'm not very comfortable at all. Boss?
I think you're stretching it a little thin here with the total of $50,000. I think it would be reasonable to have the $150,000, have the $50,000 into the next 3 years of budget. And, because I think that way we could probably get it done. And, like I said, if we don't need it all, that we can get more sponsorships, that we don't need all that money, but I would like to leave it at the 150. Because otherwise, I think we're spreading ourselves a little bit. Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been consistent since this first came to council. I don't see the return on an investment this large. I don't see it as an investment. I see it as a drain on our resources. You know, we had a discussion a couple weeks ago during budget, and I thought we were going in a different direction, and that, you know, given the current constraints that we have with the budget, that this is something that could come out of the budget. We're faced with policing costs, recreation costs, a number of other costs that are rising. I thought we were going in a direction where we thought this is something that could come out. I just, like I say, I don't see how this will generate any future revenue for the county. I'm concerned about the amount of time and effort from staff that's going to go into this, both in the planning phase and when the actual tour itself comes. We're talking about mowers, sprayers, those kind of things being parked in favor of trying to pull off this tour. And I have some real concerns about that. Having said that, I would like to make the motion to rescind the previous motion to host the Agricultural Service Board Summer Tour in 2023 and have administration send a letter to withdraw from hosting the event to the Ag Service Board.
Any other discussion? Claus?
Well, saying, like what Councillor Campbell said there, he doesn't feel that it would benefit the county in any way. I mean, that's just, there's no proof that it will. The other way around, there's no proof that it will either. But I mean, if you're not gonna be doing it, you're never gonna know. And I think that opening up the county to the other ones, I think that there is opportunity. And if we don't, we won't see any opportunity whatsoever. And if we're gonna have this attitude of not opening ourselves up to new business, then we are gonna be stuck with paying more taxes for our thing, because we're not gonna have any more linear income. And I think we're behind already the way it is. And I want to bring the other ones forward too, like, it looks like we're gonna get, the final spot for Sewa. We could have been in the race for that too. We could have had that in our area too. There's over 200 people working there, and, you know, and I think doing these kind of things, we're missing out more and more. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Ken, you're the only one who hasn't spoke. You have anything to add?
Well, we've got a lot of industry here that makes parts and stuff and things like that. Like North Dakota, Kohler, that's they make all those pipes for
The concrete place?
yeah, and they ship that all over the world. And then, there is, it's really hard to figure out what, you know, being in 3 years down the road, what's gonna happen. And I would, but I know how much work is involved in it and stuff, and it's in the
discussion? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This tour isn't about generating economic activity. This is, again, municipal councilors from Alberta. They're not looking to invest in Lethbridge County. They're looking for investment in their own districts, not in Lethbridge County. So to spend $150,000, which is pretty much a 1% increase in taxpayers' dollars, in my opinion, is not a good idea.
Well, I do think it's somewhat unfair to say you don't get any economic future out of it, because sometimes some people do see things that, in actual reality, have a tendency to buy from that person down the road. So it's really hard to rate, and I appreciate what you're saying. So, is there any other opinions? If not, I'm gonna call the question. The motion on the floor is, sorry, Ken?
Like, I'm maybe siding with the 50,000, and then, that won't put us in too much of things, so, but I would, if that would be considered a friendly motion, or
A friendly amendment? But we have a motion to rescind, so I don't know how you could friendly amend that to that too. So, clause?
Well, I think that we should probably vote on this motion first before we make any other decisions on this one.
So, before we do that, we have a 9:30 appointment. So we're gonna put this in the parking lot and go ahead with our 9:30 appointment. So Shannon Frank is here from Director John. Is John? No?
No, he's not gonna come. I'm
Okay.
gonna just, I'm showing you a video, so I'm not sure if I should download it to the computer first.
Morris, what do you think?
Might freeze.
yeah. Good morning.
Do you know everybody, Jen? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll let that roll at least for a minute. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time. Shannon Frank from the Old Man Watershed Council. It's good to see you again. So first, I just wanted to thank you for your annual contributions to the Old Man Watershed Council. We really appreciate that, and it really helps keep us going. Especially this past year, we only just heard from Alberta Environment and Parks 2 weeks ago about our operational grant, so your donations actually helped us keep going until we heard from some of our other funders. So it's really important, and we appreciate that. I also want to recognize Dwayne.
Is that the mic on? I'm sorry.
I think so. Sorry, are you having trouble
Yeah,
hearing me?
there you go.
Okay, I'll bring it closer. I said thank you. And I also just wanted to recognize Dwayne Rogness. He's on our board of directors representing agriculture. And John DeGroot is the alternate for that position. Dwayne has been a really positive partner for us. We work together on a lot of events showcasing the stewardship efforts of producers in the county. And we have a few things coming up as well that I'm excited to tell you about. So we're going to be doing the Holding the Reins event again in March. It's been a couple years since we've had that. You probably remember in Fort McLeod, usually we have that. It's really a producer showcase, and we get a lot of government folks, producers, NGOs, and it's a really good way for people to learn about what the latest and greatest that's happening on the land, and also hear what's coming down from the government, that sort of thing. So that's coming up in March, and we're going to be booking a date first thing in January. And right now, we're also accepting applications to the Watershed Legacy Program. That's the small grant program where we give funds directly to producers for riparian fencing, off-stream watering, stuff like that, that benefits our watershed. And Dwayne always helps get applications in from producers in your county and helps review the ones from other counties, and then we decide who gets that funding. And that all comes from private foundations, and so that's a really good way that we leverage the donations that you guys make. So I kind of mentioned a couple weeks ago we did receive our operational grant from Alberta Environment and Parks, so we do have a 4-year grant agreement, and that's actually the first time we've ever had a long-term agreement like that, so we're really excited about that. It's going to allow us to plan out the next 4 years in you know, a lot more stability and security that way. So that's going to allow us to take on some longer term projects, and a couple of those actually are directly related to agriculture in the county. And so we're just waiting to hear back from some of the CAP grants for some of these projects. But so one of them is called Uniting Rural Producers and Urban Consumers. And that's all about building public trust in agriculture, focused primarily on millennials who have concerns, as you know, about how food is produced and the impact on the environment. So we're going to be doing a big education project around that. We were told it's been recommended for approval to the Minister of Agriculture, so we're just waiting on the final word, but it's looking good. And the other one that we were told was recommended for approval is the WaterSmart partnership to bring the Alliance for Water Stewardship to Lethbridge County and the Tabor Irrigation District. So that involves the international certification group called the Alliance for Water Stewardship, and they actually certify throughout the supply chain from producers to processors to end users to show that there's been being good water stewardship. So that's really exciting. And then lastly, we've applied for some additional producer education events, so holding the reins, tours, range and riparian health assessments, and the on-the-ground improvement projects. And we're doing actually more and more of those also with the Kainai and the Pekani, which has been really good to see, and they have large land bases, so it's been really beneficial working with them and in helping improve their habitat and their, the stream banks on their substantial native grasslands as well as the croplands. So, getting now to the video. I think it's about 9 minutes long, so I will stop now so you can watch that. You may recall we have this video partnership with Lethbridge County, and we're going to be making 3 videos. So this is the first one, and it's not public yet. You're the first ones to see it. It hasn't been shown to anybody else yet. We still do need to show it to the stars in the videos before we release it and make sure that they're happy. So once these are done, we will be releasing them publicly and using them primarily to educate urban consumers, but they're also a good a record of what's happening now and kind of a time capsule, and we can split them up as well. There's 3 different producers being profiled, and you will know them all. And so we can split them into shorter videos. We can show them this full-length video. And what we found is that it's been very popular with groups like the Nature Center, our local teachers, other educators and nonprofits, because what people really want is to know locally what's happening. They want to know what's happening right in their neighborhood, not globally. A lot of what we hear about, you know, farming or agriculture or irrigation is kind of on a global scale, and a lot of what we hear isn't actually happening here in southwest Alberta. So we wanted to make this to show people that the local producers are doing a lot of good things, and things have improved a lot over time, and that we're constantly raising the bar. And so you'll see this. Some of this won't be new to you, but to be honest, you're not the intended audience. This is for the urban consumers who do not know this stuff, and to them this is completely new and hopefully exciting and good news for them to hear. So with that, I will show you the video, and then
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Frank, just so you're aware, in case you're not, you talked about this not having been released to the public yet. We are in an open public meeting. We're being live streamed, and media is present as well. Just so you're aware that, you know, this is going to get out there if you show this today.
Sure, yeah, no, that's okay.
Thank you.
It's you know, 99% done. I noticed there's still a couple of spelling mistakes, but other than that, it's pretty much good to go, so that's okay. And we'll do like a big public release as well, so, yeah. There's no sound. What is that?
My family bought Sandy Hill Feedlot about 9 years ago, and the feedlot was originally started in the 1950s. So a lot of the standards have really increased over the time in the cattle feeding industry. Some of the things that were really important for us is to make comfortable places for the cattle to stay. So they live in pens with, they basically are normally standing on a dirt floor. And so we wanted to make sure that we had the best places for them to stand. We've most recently invested in roller compacted concrete, which is it's basically like a concrete floor that the cattle can stay on rather than standing on dirt. And it's been awesome for cattle comfort. They are able to get out of the mucky pens when we have lots of rain, and makes it a lot easier for us to haul their manure out of the pens on a timely basis, and we're having a better quality manure because we don't haul out dirt along with the manure. And so it's kind of a win-win for us and the cattle. At our feedlot, we will take the manure and sometimes we'll compost it. So we put it in piles and then we turn it and let all the weed seeds and everything break down as the manure heats up. And then we will haul it out onto lands to grow crop. And sometimes we'll haul it right out of the pens, right into our fields, and mix it with the dirt. And it helps us grow all the different crops we grow, like corn, barley, wheat, potatoes, and alfalfa. Some of the crops go get fed back to the cattle. Some of them will grow crops like potatoes where they'll go get turned into French fries. At our feedlot, we're kind of special in a way that we're able to get potatoes that come from the local French fry plant. These are potatoes that may not make the grade to be turned into French fries. Sometimes we actually get French fries that they might have a production problem and aren't able to package them. And rather than take them to a landfill, we'll haul them to our cattle and they get to eat them. And it's an awesome feed. There's great nutritional value. So the cattle love them, and it actually makes a really nice feed because it's quite moist. And when we feed the barley or wheat that we're feeding our cattle, the moisture from the potatoes just makes kind of a nice porridge for them, and they perform really well on it. Yeah, one thing that's really improved in feedlots in southern Alberta is that we're doing a lot better job holding on to the rainwater that comes down on our feedlots. By law, we're required to contain all the water that falls onto our property and contain it into catch basins. So at the feedlot that we're at here, it's really sandy soil and there's a high water table. So typically you'd use a clay-based liner to build your catch basins. Here we've invested in a synthetic liner, a plastic liner, so that when the water runs off of the pens, goes into this catch basin that has a plastic lining. The water will sit there, and when the time is right, we'll pump it through our irrigation pivots, and that will water the crops that we're growing. There's a lot of nutrients in that water too, so it's great fertilizer and moisture for the crops. It's imperative that we keep our waterways clean, so that our job is to hold the water and just use it on our fields to grow our crops.
My name is Rob Van Dieven. You're currently at Van Dieven Poultry Farm. The great things that we currently do in innovation is for about a year and a half we do have solar panels on our barn and cutting down on electricity use from the grid and sending it back if you have too much. So carbon footprint has been cut down by about 35% in the last 20 years. Biggest reason for that is our efficiency in feed consumption. We are making feed every single day. We are getting supplements from the feed mill that's regulated by HACCP programs. We are adding our own wheat to it in order to keep the cost down on A, on the feed, and B, on transportation. We have to have land in order to offset our manure, and at the same time from the land we are getting grain in order to feed to our birds. So about 25% of the diet is coming from our own land, and it's 85% grain based. 20 years ago, feed conversions of 2 kilos per kilo of meat. Currently we are as close as 1.5 kilos. So our carbon footprint is definitely getting a lot better, despite what people might think.
When I started out with an irrigation farm, and we started out as a contour farm, contour ditches, and made hole in the ditches and you flooded the field. That was where I started. Now we have a computer screen with pivots on it, and we can stop and start pivots right from the computer, and it's communicating with the pivot point, and we don't even get our feet wet, so to speak. It came a long way from flood irrigation, with contour ditches, to hand-move pipes, to wheel-line pipes, to pivots. As of today, you know, computerized, guy in the shop, he knows when to stop the pivot and when to start the pivot, or he wants to put it on 5% or he wants to put it at 100%. That's the ideal place right now. It's unreal compared to what I used to, have, you walk through the mud and, it was a big job. But as of lately, the pivots, they're all low pressure pivots. And at one time we had above the pipe sprinklers, what they call impact sprinklers, and they used to waste water through evaporation. Now all we have, and in most good farmers I have what they call low pressure pivots, and the water is dropped below the pipe. Low pressure at 35 pounds rather than 60 pounds before. And there's very little evaporation, it just goes to the ground. It's a big difference. A lot less power, 35 pounds pressure rather than 60 or 70 pound pressure. So there is a tremendous change, not just in the power use, but also water use. Probably do with less water, more acres. I should tell you, pivots never stop. When you order the water from the ditch wagon, he puts in an order and says there's got to be so many feet of water in this ditch and you have to use the water. You can't just say, well, sorry, I'm going to go to bed tonight. No. Even that thing, right? But that's where the computerized communication between the pivot point and the thing is nice, because you can get up at 4 o'clock and look at it going. All you have to do is maybe stick your head outside the window. So, it's a major difference. That's a big change. The Lethbridge area is only good for 14 inches of water a year. That's including the snow and runoff. So if it wasn't for the irrigation, we wouldn't have any feedlots. We wouldn't have any feeding operations. We wouldn't have any chicken. And plus the row crop end of it. If you go around drive by the table, there's a huge sugar factory there, right? So if it wasn't for irrigation, there wouldn't be no beets. There wouldn't be no beets. There wouldn't be no row crops. The benefit of that irrigation is just endless. Before they shut the water down, they give you warning. They say the water is going to be off on October the 1st, say. That means you have a huge dugout that you keep the water there for all winter. Okay? Because if you didn't have that dugout and you didn't have the water, well, there's no use feeding cattle, or feeding anything for that matter, until you have water. Water is a big thing. It'll be a different country altogether.
You probably noticed we filmed Rob on the Lethbridge County tour, so that was perfect.
I think it's a very good video.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, so excited to show that to lots and lots of people and have discussions about what they're saying, because a lot of people need explanation and discussion to figure it out. I still get questions from people saying, what are those things in the field? Pivots, and I don't know what they are, so.
So in your other series of them, do you have anything, say, like related to pulse crops, or things like that, like that are irrigated?
Like the different crops?
Yeah. Because it
I
seems
think-
to be kind of related to livestock more than anything.
Yeah, this one is. The next one features Noreen Ambrose, talking about riparian areas and improvements there, Dwayne and Gary. So that the next one will be a bit more about riparian health and how the county is supporting producers and things like that. And then the third one is going to be for kids, so that's going to have to be a little bit more basic and different. But we kind of, there's one of the reasons we focused on livestock in this video was because the public knows that there's a lot of feedlots here, and they are, they have questions about that. They're wondering how things have changed over time. Like the Battersea drain is still a thing in people's mind that they remember. They've been here for a long time. And so we did that on purpose to make sure that we're just telling people how much things have improved over time and how there's been so much work done to do that. And so there is a bit of a focus on that on purpose, because that's what people are thinking about, and we need to address that and not, we can't ignore it, we can't say nothing about it. But with the public trust project that we're pretty sure is going to go ahead, there's going to be a web series of 16 different episodes or videos, and in those we will be able to focus specifically on different aspects. So one of them would be around sugar, one would be around French fries and things like that people can understand and connect with in the public. So that's where we'll be able to dive deeper into the different types of crops and the different issues that are in the forefront of people's mind.
So is that what you meant when you were talking about earlier about the ag minister?
Yes, exactly. So that project, the Public Trust Project, that features 16 web episode videos and 8 printed stories and 6 events, is that project, has been recommended to the Ag Minister for approval. So we're, pretty close to thinking that's going to go ahead.
Laws and then get.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, great video. I really appreciate that you're going this route, and I think it's a really good education for a lot of people that aren't aware of what's all been going on. And I think that to reflect from where we were till where we are now, and the improvements that we have made for the environment and everything like that, I think that's really important for people, everybody to know, not only environmentalists, but everybody. And I'm sure you're going to be continuing on with this, with more different series of films and stuff like that for this. And like I said, for the row crops and the sugar beets and the potatoes and so forth and so forth. Thank you, very well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that video was probably good because it started and they give the history of it and went through it to what it is now and how much more efficient everything's running. And that's on all three things. Just, I remember pipes and rubber boots, but the thing, but that I think should really get it across the.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your provincial operational grant, did it remain stable from what you're used to the last few years, or was there an increase or decrease?
There was a decrease, so provincially across Alberta, there's 11 watershed councils, and so provincially there was a 15% reduction in funding, and then that's allocated, like not every watershed council gets the same amount, but yeah, there was a reduction.
Any other questions? I guess not.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll come back and show you the next video when it's ready.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Merry
And,
Christmas. Merry Christmas.
It's a great project, so all the best this season.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Digest, and that's the company we've been using for the last few years as a consultant on this project. They're based out of Ontario. Chris has been our project lead for that entire duration, and will hopefully be to the end. He's a senior asset management specialist with that PSD. So I'm going to let him do most of the talking and kind of show our progress so far, and obviously feel free to ask questions as we go. Over to Kate.
Well, thank you for having me for one. It's always a pleasure to come back. I've been here and fortunate enough to come to Lethbridge a few times now. You have a great team I'm working with here throughout this project. It's been very beneficial from start to finish, or I shouldn't say finish, it's not finished yet. Today I'm going to present on the progress that has been made through the asset management program development with Lethbridge County. More importantly, at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about next steps for the county and some recommendations on how to move forward and raise the maturity of your asset management program going forward. So for today, we're going to talk high level some of the advancements that have been made throughout the program and throughout the project. First off, asset management program development review. So what does that mean, start to finish, for your county? Database restructuring and asset management. Condition assessment program results. So there's been some very good results come back from the assessment programs that they've put in place. We'll talk about the risk frameworks, life cycle management of asset and frameworks associated with that, levels of service, and then finally next steps in asset management. And if we look at the process that Lethbridge County has went through from start to finish, there's three key phases to developing an asset management program. It comes in the assessment phase, the planning phase, and the implementation phase. Lethbridge County, at this point, has made it through the first two phases and just approaching into the third phase. First off, the framework comes in the form of a policy. Well, you already have strategic asset management policy in place. When we look at the structure, your organizational structure, you've adopted a structure that suits asset management. So you have an asset management steering committee in place, which is a very it's an integral part of your asset management program. Direction came in the form of state of maturity reports and asset management systems assessments.
So that gave the direction on where we needed to go next with the program. Perform and demand analysis. So taking a look at your asset portfolio, how is it performing, but what is the future demands on your infrastructure and assets as well. After the assessment phase, we moved into that planning phase. So there was a strategy put in place, which is not a formal strategy, but it's an asset management roadmap. And that's what we've been doing with the county from the beginning of this project. The county has done a very good job of prioritizing what needs to be accomplished first, which kept them on track and progressing forward with the program. Data has made leaps and bounds. So the data that drives all of your asset management program has evolved into consistency, standardization, and compiling information and data from all different sources. So they've done a really good job of that. But further to that, analyzing what data you have and what data you're still missing as far as your assets are concerned. And then, of course, frameworks. And frameworks come in the form of risk analysis and life cycle frameworks. So life cycle management of your assets from acquisition to disposal. Now moving into the implementation phase, this is where we're at today. So we're in the process of defining benchmarks to the levels of service frameworks. And we'll talk a little bit about that more when we get into the presentation. But coming forward in the future, what you should be looking at is your financial analysis documentation. So documenting and formalizing all of these processes in your asset management program. Communication, and then executing it through a comprehensive asset management plan. If we look at the database restructuring for asset management, today, the challenge for many municipalities, and I see this all the time throughout Canada, I work with municipalities from coast to coast, is there's multiple data sets, with multiple different sets of information. It comes from all different angles: planning, engineering, GIS, finance. We're all talking about the same thing, but in different languages. So bringing that information together and centralizing it is it's a challenge with every municipality. And, if we look, what the overall objective was, is to create a centralized municipal asset management database, which Lethbridge County has done a very good job at today. We've restructured the database for asset management, and it's proving some very good results. And the most important thing is your municipal staff aren't breaking down the silos of information. They're linking and connecting information. I don't like the term breaking down silos. Breaking down silos means that you're taking away the ability to manage your own data. But linking everybody's data together in a centralized database is very important. And that came through discussions, collaboration, your steering committee, having meetings, discussing what the organizational objectives and needs were in this data management. From there, they translated and consolidated all this information into one centralized database, where we're at today with core infrastructure assets. And from that, they were able to build a structure that supports asset management, but also supports all the other business needs of your organization and every department. And if we look at the achievements to date, there's a well-organized data hierarchy that will support organizational objectives and business needs and business objectives. Consolidated multiple data sets into one core infrastructure database for core infrastructure assets. Standardized language. So one of the biggest hurdles with consolidating data is, like I said before, we're all talking about the same thing in different languages. So the naming conventions, standard categorizations and segments of information and data, and making sure everybody's using that same language. And industry best practice and indexing standards adopted. So through this program, we looked at the IIMM, which is the International Infrastructure Maintenance Manual, on best practices on how to manage your data and information. Uniformat 2 coding indexing format for your facilities through that facilities assessment that the county just went through not too long ago with that CapEx. And also ISO 55000 standards. Now, I'm not saying you're falling fully in line in compliance with ISO 55000 standards, but you're accepting and adopting some of that methodology into what you're building. So when we look at the condition assessment program results, and I'm just going to focus on one asset category in particular because we don't have time. This is a short presentation, but I think what you'll find is the results and the benefits of assessed condition on assets is integral to asset management. So what you're looking at here is an example of Age-based condition was the database historically, and this is for your facilities portfolio assets. So 41 facilities throughout Lethbridge County, and these are the results and the comparisons. If we look at it from a replacement value perspective, if we use old data based on age-based condition and replacement costs, you can see here that 27% of the value of all your assets and components within your facilities fall into a very good condition rating. But after the assessments, you can see that only 4% of the value of all of your assets in your facilities fall in that very good condition range. More importantly, we see 40% in good, but 44% in fair. That 44% represents a wave of needs coming forward over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's based on replacement value. But because they did a good job of restructuring the database and putting all this information in consistently and by standards, we can look at this information in many different ways. Maybe you want to look at this information through an asset count perspective. So out of all the assets and all the facilities and the 41 facilities throughout the county, we can see here based on asset count, 22% of all components in your facilities fell under age-based condition, and that 22% very good. Alarmingly, only 0.5% when we look at assessed conditions, so good assessed conditions through that third party, only 0.5% of all assets count fall in that very good range. And again, 45% in good and 36% in fair, which is not too alarming. This assessed condition gives you a better indication of what your needs are coming forward in the future. Further to that, if we break it down by facility, this is how your portfolio facility assets look today. So this is all 41 facilities with all the major components in the facilities, replacement values, percentages of how much falls within each group. That doesn't look too bad. But if we look at each individual facility, it's a different picture. So if we look at the results from your Lethbridge Administration Building, you can see that 2/3 of your facility, Lethbridge Administration Facility, falls in that fair range. Meaning there is a wave of needs coming forward, replacements, repairs coming forward for this facility. Further to that, if we look at Diamond City Community Center, there is substantial amount of the assets and components within that facility that fall in that poor range, and a very high replacement value associated with that as well. Your picture view public works shop, again, there's that picture, about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the assets within that facility fall into that fair condition range, and a substantial amount fall in the very poor range. Picture view office shop, again, many of those assets, components within that facility fall in that very poor range, with minimally in the very good range. So for every single, in their centralized asset management software that they're using today, they can run this report on every single individual facility. So all 41 facilities, you can run these reports on. It gives them the knowledge and the information and knowledge they need to make better decisions on what needs to be accomplished first. If we look at your portfolio of facilities, where do we need to put our budget dollars over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? That's not my job to tell you how to do that. The data gives you the information you need to make better informed decision making for your processes going forward. If we look at the risk analysis that was accomplished, I'm just going to review what risk means. So risk is a customized framework for every single municipality, no matter where you are, your geographic location, your socio-political factors, all play a part in this. And if we look at what risk is, we have to look at what attribute data is available first. So again, we go back to that data structure that they've been building over the last few years. Which impact will the attribute data contribute to? Will it be a probability of failure? That can be assessed condition or age-based condition, deterioration accelerating factors, accelerators, like traffic counts, or heavy traffic, or maybe even climatic impacts and infrastructure demands. If we look at the consequence failure side, we've adopted many of these impacts into risk frameworks for many asset categories, and that falls under the economic impacts, the social impacts, environmental impacts, which is considered the triple bottom line in industry best practice, but in Lethbridge, you went beyond the triple bottom line to incorporate other factors like operational impacts, health and safety impacts, and also strategic impacts. And today, with Lethbridge County, we developed detailed risk models for the road network, bridges, facilities, water distribution system, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers, and high-level risk analysis on fleet, equipment, and parks and recreational assets. And what that looks like, if we look at what risk is, it's the probability of failure times the consequence of failure. And this, if you look to the right of the screen, this is the process we went through for every single asset category. We looked at what asset attribute data was available, what impacts are associated with risk in those infrastructure categories, and from there, we were able to weight and subweight these factors based on your internal knowledge here, your professional knowledge with your team. And again, every single asset, you can run a risk matrix out of the software, which then will give you the results of how much risk is associated with your asset portfolio. If we look at lifecycle management strategies today, the first thing you have to look at is have a good understanding of the complexity of your asset portfolio. So you need to break that portfolio down and understand what is it that you really own, and which we did. Understand demand and performance needs. Again, that's that information that we get from condition assessments and demand analysis. And if we look at the road network, I'm certainly going to stick to road networks because we don't have time to go through it all. It was identified that you have three major types, or three types of hot mix roads within the county. That's arterial roads, collector roads, and local roads. Further to that, you have gravel roads. Those gravel roads are even broken down further yet into level 1, level 2, and level 3, dependent on maintenance needs, traffic counts, rehabilitation needs, and so on. So by doing this, we're optimizing what you're doing to your assets and when and at the right time. And further to that, now you have haul routes. And so haul routes is a new strategy or a new initiative that you've taken in the county. It's very interesting. I like the idea around of how you're trying to implement a new strategy to see if it will better support your transportation network. But with that, we really don't know what do we need to do to base stabilize roads over the next 10, 15, 20 years. But through the process, we've identified key things that maybe need to be done. But over the next 5, 10 years, more importantly, you're going to refine and understand how to maintain those roads better for the best, at the right time, for the right amount of money. Now that we've defined what your asset portfolio really is, we've broken it down, now we can decide what are the treatment options available. And this is just a breakdown for roads, for example. You have your general maintenance, for potholing. Preventative maintenance, what do we do to the roads to maintain it at its current condition to better align it with maybe rehabilitation options coming forward in the future. Then you have your rehabilitation, mill and paves, maybe restabilizing, base stabilized roads, and so on. And you can see as we move down the list, the cost becomes greater and greater on replacements and also maybe replacement upgrades. So obviously doing the right thing at the right time and applying those rehabilitation strategies at the right time are going to save the county money in the long run. What does that look like within the system? We have deterioration curves and prediction models. So these are 3 different scenarios for paved roads. So under those paved roads, you would not do the same treatment options on a local road as you would an arterial road. You may have a more aggressive crack sealing program on an arterial road than you would a local road. But what are the costs associated with that and when do we do it? How often do we rehabilitate a local road versus an arterial road? So we create these profiles, attach costs with those profiles, and optimize how you're spending your budget dollars through these treatment strategies. The software then gives you capital expenditure projections over the next 15, 20, 30 years based on this information, but we're not going to get into that today. More importantly, it's continuous improvement with life cycle strategies. It's not a one and done. It's not something you say, oh, yeah, we created a strategy and that's all we're going to do. Over time, you'll refine it. Things change over time. What I see a trend throughout Canada is a lot of municipalities are experiencing these free stock periods. So with that, the roads are breaking up more quickly. Now they have to rethink, well, how do we really manage this and how do we adapt to this? And that's what we do it. We do it through improvements. But first you have to understand what level you're really at. This is from the International Infrastructure Maintenance Manual. This is how you would rank yourself based on your level of development when it comes to life cycle treatment strategies. So again, I'm not going to speak at what level you're at today, but this is the thought process behind it. More importantly, once you define where you're at today, what level you're at, what's our goal going forward in the future? Do we want to get to that intermediate or advanced level of life cycle management strategies? Success takes time and commitment. Again, I'll say it again, it's not a one and done. It's something that you'll refine year on year. You'll come up with better strategies. You'll find better ways to optimize your budget dollars through these strategies. So you have to revisit it on a regular basis to optimize these strategies. So levels of service is the next piece we're working on with Lethbridge County to date. And to date, we've defined core service values, levels of service statements, community levels of service statements. And we've identified at a high level, we have cost, because with the assessments that we've done and the life cycle strategy, we applied current replacement cost today on what those infrastructure, what it would cost to replace those assets today. We have condition on some of the assets because they have condition assessments. Ones that do not have assessed condition will defer back to age-based condition, but in the example I've shown you, age-based condition is definitely not the way to predict what your needs are coming forward in the future because it's just a skewed result. So eventually in the future, you'll work towards those technical levels of service through KPIs. Identifying KPIs that can be measured, tracked, and they're specific to each asset category. So giving you something to set a baseline on and also set proposed levels of service for the future. So now we'll talk about next steps and recommendations in the program. So for next steps, in line with the asset management program for Lethbridge County, we need to establish current levels of service baselines, which I just talked about. We have a framework in place, now we have to define a baseline. From that baseline, then we can set some goals. And that will be something that internally you'll discuss, your team will discuss to say, what is our level of service we want to provide to the public? So what are those goals and how are we going to meet that? You should have capital funding, you go through capital funding analysis, and also determining alternative budget scenarios in the future. So having 2 or 3 options, budget scenarios, will help you optimize your budget dollars or your budgets going forward in the future. Document asset management processes and procedures. Formalizing your asset management program is key. So documenting it, these are guidelines that you'll follow in the future, your team will follow in the future as you have transition, people come and go out of the municipality. You have those formal documentations to back up the program to make sure it's continuity into the future. Develop a comprehensive asset management plan. Most importantly, you have an asset management plan already, but what I've noticed with municipalities throughout Canada is there's these asset management plans or a report that will sit on a shelf, and they're not a living document going forward in the future. What your county is building today into their centralized asset management database is they're linking it now to an asset management plan in the future where you can review and update that plan annually or every 5 years at not a heavy cost to the municipality, because you can simply pull this information because it links, you can pull it out of your centralized asset management database, so your charts, your graphs, your inventory tables, they're all there in your software. It's simply pulling it out and updating your plan with that information, so you're not reinventing the wheel going forward in the future. And develop an asset management communication plan. So how do we communicate asset management right from our elected officials, to our CAO, right down to our field staff and even into the community? Everybody should have a good understanding of what asset management is going to provide to your community going forward in the future. Recommendations, develop a data governance strategy or policy. How are we going to maintain all this information and data going forward in the future and ensure its integrity? And that comes in the form of a strategy or a data governance policy that's adopted by council. Adopt a formal condition assessment program strategy and expand to all municipal assets over time. So again, assess condition is very important to give you a projection of what your needs are coming forward in the future. So it's highly recommended. Expand asset database inventory restructuring and consolidation to all asset categories in a phased-in approach going forward in the future. So we look at non-core assets. Maybe we need to look at fleet, IT equipment, furniture, and fixtures. Continually improve that database structure. You have a great foundation on your core infrastructure now. Now it's time to move forward with the rest over time. And this won't happen overnight. It's something that you'll put a plan in place and you'll chip away at it. And also undergo periodic asset management audits to ensure your program ensures continuity, integrity, and continuous improvement over time. It's not something that you will just, I'll say it again, it's not a one and done. It will have continuous improvement over time, and it will get better and better over time. What I will say, and I'm going to say this, I work with many municipalities in Alberta. I have 13 clients in Alberta, half of those being counties, so Needhill County, Camrose County, Stettler County, Saddle Hills. And what I'm starting to notice is Lethbridge County is becoming more of an industry leader in asset management among counties and smaller to mid-sized municipalities in Alberta. I get it more and more all the time when I'm on site working with these communities, they're asking me what Lethbridge County is doing because your team is doing a really good job here. You may think there's a lot of work to be done in the future, which there is, but your team here is ahead of the curve compared to your neighboring municipalities in Alberta. And I do want to say that they've done a great job with that here, and people are looking towards Lethbridge County now on how to improve their programs going forward. They've witnessed it at the CNAM conference. Mike Lai and I presented at CNAM in Kelowna. I have municipalities in the Greater Toronto area inquiring about the risk models you built for your county here for your bridge network. A lot of municipalities in Ontario also see a connection between what you've developed here and how maybe they can incorporate that into their asset management processes. So it's not just here, you're being recognized for all the good work you're doing right across the country. So I just wanted to say that in conclusion to this presentation.
Any questions? Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation. Not that I understood everything of it, but and the other thing I got to say, nice hairdo. And you know, I think what you have, like you said, you got 13 different counties and MDs in Alberta here. Where is, because you gave us compliments on how are we doing the asset management and everything that we're leaders, and looking at the charts and everything that you had there, that were, there's the majority of the asset management that we've seen here was that it was good or less than good. So where are we at looking province-wide?
I wouldn't be able to rate province-wide because there's no statistics from a provincial perspective. What I know is with the municipalities that I work with, you're definitely ahead of the curve, and you're now moving forward. There's other municipalities, and it's not just counties I work with. I work with towns, mid-sized, small towns, so Nanton, Carstairs, Devon, Edson, to name a few, Lacombe, the city of Lacombe. Some of those municipalities are just starting asset management. Edson and Devon were ahead of the curve for a long time, but I see Lethbridge County starting to pull ahead of that. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. There's just certain things that your team has done here that other teams aren't doing. But they're moving forward with it. And now they're asking those questions. And I use Lethbridge County as an example when I'm working with other municipalities in Alberta. I want to give them examples because they always ask the question, well, what does that look like? So I will go into your database and I will show them examples of what you're doing. Database structure. Database structure and standardization is a hot topic. No one knows where to start. How do we even undertake and go about consolidating all this information? So I use those as examples for those others. So when I say where you are provincially, I wouldn't really say, you know, you look at the city of Edmonton and Calgary, they've been doing asset management for years, but they're also mega centers that they needed to address this many years ago. Do I know what level they're at? No, I don't. Do I know what level every other county is within Alberta? No, I don't. There's no stats behind that. It's just what my personal experience is with all the municipalities I work with in the West. In Alberta, you are moving ahead of the curve. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, you know, I tried to read through all of it, you know, and just like the honorable over there said, you know, it's pretty hard to get really hold of it, you know, and all of it. But the thing is, the bottom line is our county, as long as I've been on council down there, you know, we always put a lot of emphasis on, hey, if it looks like it's broken or it's going to be broken, get there and fix it and get ahead of the game. Instead of, you know, well, we'll get by. When you start to say that, we'll get by or whatever, before you know it, we'll way behind. And so I think that helped. You know, us as a council and as management, you know, we always have, hey, we gotta get out, get it fixed.
Yeah, your county's been very proactive, and I think continual support from council is also, that's key in moving asset management forward in the county. You know, you've made all this progress to date, made very good progress, and you know, it needs to continue. It'd be a shame to see all of that hard work be put on the shelf and collect dust. you're close to, your end goal, which may be another 3 or 4 years down the road, continual improvement, but you will get there. At the rate you're going, I can see within 4 or 5 years, you'll have this expanded through all your asset categories. You'll have a very good, asset management program in place.
Any other questions? I guess at the end of the day, I still struggle to understand the entire need of this because, as you said before, we've always worked on that same philosophy. So I'm not sure at the end of the day what we're really accomplishing.
What you're accomplishing is you're optimizing the way you operate, the way you maintain your assets, the way you plan for the future. When you start looking at sustainability projections, all of this information and data and all the hard work you've been doing is going to give you a better idea of what your sustainability needs are. How do we become sustainable in the future? There's a wave of needs, as you've seen in the assessment results. There is a wave of needs coming forward, and that's just facilities. But knowing what your wave, what that wave of needs is coming forward in the future now, you can better plan for that in the future. So again, you'll be optimizing your processes, efficiencies, and how you manage your infrastructure, how you maintain it, and coming up with better options and treatment strategies to maybe extend your budget dollars further through doing the right thing to the right asset at the right time. The results have already started to show, they're already starting to show. There are cost benefits. At the end of the process, if you were to continue on with your asset management, develop that comprehensive asset management plan, the results would start to show what your cost benefit is by undertaking asset management. I went through the full process from start to finish with other municipalities, and for a small town example that I've worked with, I won't mention any names, in the end of it, when they've incorporated all these life cycle strategies on assets and for the core infrastructure, they come to the conclusion that if we continue down this path, we're at a cost benefit. The municipality would be at a cost benefit of $250,000 annually. Now, that may seem like peanuts for a county of your size or a big city, but for a town of 4,000 people, $250,000 cost benefit, that's huge. More importantly, this particular municipality, this isn't a 5-year plan. We have put a 20-year plan in place for them, incrementally increasing taxes and so on. And over 20 years, they will get to a sustainable level. But it's going to take that long to get there. But they have to start now. If they didn't start now, the deficit and the backlog just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Sorry, I can't agree with you. I think we already knew the problem. This won't make it any better. You still have to come up with the ability to pay for it somehow or other.
Well, that's
you're
what
not
we're
gonna,
trying to do.
you're not gonna create that by, you still know. In fact, you're creating a bigger liability by actually putting it on paper, in my opinion. So, anyway.
Yeah, but it will give you the information and data you need to back up those decisions you make. No matter what those decisions are, informed decision making is always a better way to go rather than making assumptions. So
Well, I guess I
that's
feel
all.
like you're treating us like we never did anything in the past, and
Oh, no, not at all.
I take quite an offense to that, so that's,
No.
anyway, we'll leave it
My
at that.
my apologies, that's not the intention whatsoever. You've done a lot of great things there, and I, acknowledge that to your team as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Buzz?
I gotta put my 2 bits in what you said. I don't agree with the way you look at it. I think that this is a management tool that we have, that we know what's in the future, and I think, I wasn't on council times before, so I don't know how you guys did it, probably, but I see now the ability that you have to pinpoint the necessities of where we're going and what we have in the long-term future. I think those are absolutely tools that you need as a county to be able to keep everything in shape and with your bridges and your infrastructure. So I really think this is a good program.
Any other comments? I guess thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Holiday?
Enjoy your holidays.
Yeah, keep it. So we do need a motion to accept this roof major.
I'll move so.
Morris, all in favor? carried. We will have a 5-minute break. We might as well do the community peace officer policies.
Good morning, Dave. Hey, how are you? I'm good, how are you, Warren? Good.
So I'm here to present 3 policies that are requirement under the Solicitor General. The 3 CPO program policies are presented for council considerations. These policies have already been accepted by the Solicitor General. They have already been approved by them. Two of these policies are as a result of the Rob Lassenby fatality that happened back in 2012. The peace officer that got killed up by Curtis. There's a public inquiry, and as a result of that, we had to draft 2 new policies, which. So that's it?
Was that the gravel pit?
No, he showed up to a dog complaint, and he got ambushed. So one of them is the known risk policy, and then the communications policy, and then the third one is an exhibit handbook policy for cannabis. There are already several CPO policies that are in place for the program. So the CPO program operates under the Peace Officer Act and falls under the authority of the Alberta Justice and Solicitor General. Under the program, the Director of Law Enforcement protects the public interest and ensures the peace officer role is exercised in accordance with legislative and policy frameworks. They send out regular bulletins for program policy changes that are required to all authorized employers in Alberta, and which Lethbridge County is one of them. So in 2019, new policy requirements stipulated that each authorized employer must develop and adopt policies for known risk and for communication. Furthermore, in 2019, Lethbridge County expanded my authority to enforce the Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Act. That's when cannabis got legalized.
So David, before you go past that one, I have a question. You say that the Solicitor General expanded your ability to do that?
Yes, they did, and then we had to draft a policy on how we're gonna handle, if I do come across any on a traffic stop or wherever I might be, come across cannabis, how are we gonna handle that? So, before they would authorize me, any peace officer to deal with that, we had to have a policy in place. That's standard across the province of Alberta.
So, my question is, why do we have to enforce that?
It's just like, so it falls under the same guidelines as liquor. Like if we're on a traffic stop and someone has liquor in their vehicle, it falls under those same guidelines that we can enforce that legislation.
But I guess my question though is, it just says, was expanded to permit enforcement. So to me, that only means you can do it if you want, but you don't have to do it.
Well, that's correct, but it's, if I do come across marijuana, say it's in plain sight, and it's an open container, then I can deal with it myself. I don't necessarily have to involve the RCMP. But if I don't have it, then there's nothing, if we don't have that policy in place, and it's not on my authority, then I can't do anything about it.
And we have this policy in place already for cannabis.
Yes, we've had it in place for, probably a year now.
Okay.
So to comply with these requirements, 3 policies have been drafted. The known risk policy and protocol, which we have one speaks to, so if I become aware of anyone in the county that could potentially pose a risk to myself, that could come into play either if I interact with someone and they are hostile, then I'm now required to flag that person. Or if I'm talking to other CPOs or the RCMP and they made me aware of someone. So now we have that in place, so I enter that him or her into report exec, that's what I use for my reports. And then if I go to any property, I'm required to search that property to see if there might be a potential risk of going to that property, and if there is, then I have to follow certain guidelines. I cannot go there by myself without the assistance of the RCMP or another law enforcement body, depending on what the risk might be.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Dave, I hear you loud and clear, but I'm somewhat, puzzled over why would you even want to be involved in that because of the, the status you have and the backing you have. Something like that, maybe you could just make almost like a regular citizen complain or forward it to the RCMP and let them deal with it. I personally, I can't, if I was in your position, I wouldn't be comfortable with have to pursue those type of deals.
Well,
because there's certainly a danger down there, and let's face it, if we don't have the policy in place, you would not have to deal with it, right? But you could still maybe forward it?
no, it's actually better that the policy is in place, because now it gives me clear direction of what I'm going to do when I come across a situation like that. So if I'm aware that at this certain property, there's an individual there that could potentially be, cause huge concerns for me, but I will not step foot onto that property, absolutely not.
Okay.
And that's
So
what that
you-
policy says, I will not do.
Yeah.
And I will not attend that property unless with the assistance of the RCMP, depending on the nature
Okay,
of
yeah.
the individual.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's why they want these policies, to give clear guidelines to the officers when they're gonna go and they're not going to. And then the second one is the CPO communication system policy, so that talks about when I come on duty, I check in with Lethbridge Dispatch. They know I'm on duty, they check up on me every hour on the hour, unless I go out to somebody's property or on a traffic stop. Then I give them my location, they run the plate, make sure there's no, like they run the plate on CPIC. And if anything comes back that I shouldn't be there by myself, they will notify me immediately and I will disengage. Again, every situation is different. And I never had a situation where I had to disengage. But if there was, and they would see that immediately, and then I would disengage and wait for the RCMP to assist me if need be, or depending on what exactly the case might be. And then the third one is the exhibit handling and disposal of cannabis. So, as I mentioned, these policies have already been approved by the Solicitor General. So the alternatives are revise some or all of the policies and resubmit them to the Justice and Solicitor General for approval. There's no direct financial impact. And again, like I said, these policies are a requirement of the Peace Officer Program and have already been approved by Justice and Solicitor General. The purpose of the policies is to ensure consistency, to ensure safety of the county CPO, and to instill public confidence in the program. Administration is of the opinion that adoption of these policies will ensure clear direction to the county CPO program is in place and that they are applied fairly and consistently. Any questions?
So you say it has no financial impact, but if you read through this, you have to keep some things in a locked, in a sealed, airtight compartment in a locked safe. So do we have those facilities
Yes. They're in my.
to handle that lot?
So, Jim, what's your question?
Pardon?
What's the question again? Yeah, we already have an exhibit locker in place, yes.
And how does this work? Then I see here it requires 2 people to dispose of things. So 2 peace officers to witness the destruction or pass over to police service for, so what happens to them after?
So normally how it would work, if I do see something, I bring it back, I label it as an exhibit. Larry has the key to the exhibit locker, I sign in, like it's all being tracked by why I seized it and from whom I seized it, when I seized it. I go to Larry, Larry has the key, I put it in, Larry takes the key away from me again. And if I ever want to get back into that locker, I have to go see Larry. And if it has to go to court, we have to sign out for it. It goes to the courthouse. And after all legal proceedings are completed, then either the courts dispose of it or I would dispose of it.
So, but that's what I'm asking you, is it says right here, all alcohol and cannabis disposal must be completed by no less than 2 peace officers to witness the destruction. So, how do you deal with that?
I guess at the time when.
Because we only have 1.
But it could also be the supervisor, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Not what it says here, though. Yeah,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, yeah, absolutely, that's the truth, and it also gives us the option of passing over to the police service jurisdiction for destruction. I would think in our case now that Lethbridge County operates with just 1 community peace officer, that would be the route that we should encounter this. It's fairly rare, though, I might add as well, that any officer for Lethbridge County in the CPO program actually gathers physical evidence that we have to store. It's kind of fairly rare. But nonetheless, there are procedures in place there as per this policy of how to handle those pieces of evidence should we need to acquire them or end up acquiring them.
Yeah, I've been here for 6.5 years now, and there's nothing in the exhibit locker as of yet. But we need to have it in place, should there be the need.
Morris?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so the way I kind of look at it, if you run into that type of a situation that, you know, have to confiscate the evidence or whatever, you know, I almost think, you know, that automatically would be, you know, the RCMP involved too, wouldn't it?
It would be.
I would think so, because otherwise, you know, all of the other things with the staff down there wouldn't mean anything, you know, I think when that happens, the RCMP would get involved and they'll probably take care of the evidence anyways.
Yeah, thanks for your question. You're exactly right, because I come across it so fairly inconsistent that I call the RCMP and I haven't had to call them on cannabis yet because I've come across it. But if I did, and depending on the amount, I would notify them, and they've always been able to come out and assist me on any traffic stop that I've needed them. So that's generally how I deal with it.
Kim?
So you wait for the results to come back from CPIC before you get out of your car? You were gonna play?
Most times, yes. Unless it's the only time I may not, if it's a clean vehicle and it's a family driving a vehicle, then generally doesn't pose a safety concern to me, but if it poses any type of safety concern, yes, I'm not stepping out of that vehicle.
Anything else? Well, I 100% agree that you have to be safe on a job, and you have to have things in place to protect you. Where I'm very uncomfortable is the direction of where it says you're permitted to enforce it. I think that should be clearly an RCMP job, and I'm not in favor of one person putting their life at risk to do something like that. So I have trouble with the whole part of that. Like if you were, you know, if you don't have a weapon, you don't have anything, so I feel very uncomfortable about sending somebody to do something like what this describes to me. Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But like you said before, this is adopted already by the Solicitor General, and it's kind of put into the Police Officers Act, in the Peace Officers Act. So do we have any say in what is going on here, or do we just have to, basically, well, we have to prove it by the looks of it, but it's only that we're in favor of doing that. But what if we're not in favor of doing that? Is there any way out? Probably not.
Thanks for your question. No, there is no way out. That is a must. If we don't have these policies in place, then they can come back to the authorized employer and look at the program and say, well, then you are no longer going to be an authorized employer.
I actually don't think there's any disagreement on the policy. It's what you're being asked to do now. To me, it says here to permit, doesn't mean you have to do it.
Sorry, can you guide me to where you're reading that?
Oh, I'm underneath your executive summary, and you break the background information. It says the 2019 new policy requirements stipulated that each authorized employee must develop or adopt policies for known risks and for communications. And then it goes on further to say that your duties were expanded to permit enforcement of Gaming and Liquor Cannabis Act. So, to me, that means you don't have to do that.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Chairman. So before cannabis got legalized, I already had, and so do all police officers that I'm aware of, already had the Gambling and Liquor Act on their appointment. And we only have certain sections, like I think there's like 3 sections under the Gambling and Liquor Act that we are allowed to enforce. And those are strictly, just for liquor only, those are strictly if we stop a vehicle and they have liquor in plan view, we can seize that liquor and we can write them a ticket on it. So we don't have to call the RCMP. So then cannabis got legalized, and again, they only gave us like 3 or 4 sections that we're allowed to, that they allow us to enforce, and it just deals with small quantities of marijuana, like again, if it's in plain sight, and things of that nature. And again, it's just there so we don't have to tie up the RCMP so that we can deal with it roadside.
Just basically the same, as the liquor, if you find it and see it, you can seize it, and then just the amount on it. So they're just putting in the cannabis addition to the liquor. We need more work.
Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then I can only assume that a lot of it is kind of your judgment too, if it's a small quantity or if you see a large quantity, whether you make that call to the RCMP or not for that backup, and how, I guess, safe you feel too, probably.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. Yeah, exactly. So if I stop someone that had it in plain sight, and if it's just a small quantity, I would just kindly ask them to remove it and put it in the back of their vehicle. Now, if I believe they were impaired by drugs, then I would step that up a notch depending on what the demeanor is of the person, and if I see any signs of impairment, at that point I call the RCMP. And like I said, if it's a large amount of marijuana, I contact the RCMP. If they can show up, great. If not, you're free to go, because I can't deal with it at that point. But like, I haven't come across that yet.
Any other questions? You need motion then. Claus?
You want to do them all 3 at once? Or you want to do them separate?
Barry?
I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that they be considered separately.
Okay, then I'll move the first one, that no risk policy protocol number 216 be adopted.
Any further discussion on that? Call for the question, those in favor, Those opposed, carried. 217, Bob?
CPO communication policy number 217, be adopted.
Any discussion? Call for question, those in favor? Opposed, carried. And 218? Oh, 215, sorry. You looking at you?
Sorry, who moved that?
Ken? Yeah. That's the cannabis one, disposals we got. Yeah. Okay. Okay, any discussion on that? Call for question, those in favor? Carried.
Did you find 2 bags of marijuana on the inside of the mustard ones?
That was Sean, that was involved.
So what did you do with that? Took it out?
I don't know if there was any, I'm sure there was on Sutter Road, it's probably, yeah.
Oh, he said it was a little marijuana.
Oh, it was? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you found 2 bags, well, so he said one was mustard.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it
Larry's
is.
locker.
It is Jim bag. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's move, we might as well finish this page, let's do application 1.
Do you wanna go back to the motion that was on the floor?
Well, does it really matter?
No. No,
If you wanna do that, we can go back to that.
I
one,
just
sure.
didn't know, well, I guess it won't impact this, cause it's just an interim, that's all I was thinking, but it's an
Okay.
interim anyways, so.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to rescind bylaw. Rescind the motion to have the 2023 Ag Service Board tour. So there was some discussion prior about a friendly amendment, but a friendly amendment to this motion, I don't think is quite applicable. Am I right, Larry?
Yes,
It's
Mr.
not
Chairman.
really friendly.
Well, even if it was, the motion is really a yes or no, a rescind or not to
Yes.
rescind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
Okay, so is there any further question, or discussion, sorry?
The motion is to rescind, right?
To rescind. And send a letter to the Ag Service Board gurus saying, we are, due to financial conditions of the province, we are no longer interested in participating for the 2023 Ag Service Board Summer Tour. Okay, any further discussion? Oh, Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to maybe clarify, my objection to the hosting would be the $50,000 in the next 3 years, the $150,000 of tax supported dollars. I guess I may have spoken a little bit incorrectly earlier. There is obviously some value in hosting and showcasing our region. I guess I would be willing to withdraw my motion, but I would like to have the discussion then as it pertains to budget. That's where I'm coming from this, purely from a budgeting perspective. If we were able to come to an agreement where we would somehow remove that taxpayer support and maybe go at it in a different direction, I would be more than willing to withdraw this, and we could have that discussion. But as it sits right now, the reason that I am moving that we rescind our support is because of that tie into the budget and the budget implications.
I understand what you mean here. I think the letter perhaps doesn't need to go right immediately if you decide to rescind this, to put the $50,000 in. I think there's room for to have some discussion about whether it's a valuable thing to do or not to do, or how you could arrive at a kind of almost neutral base for county involvement for money-wise. Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, that's a pretty good statement down, but Tony made down there. At one time, I thought all the service board tours were down there, they were basically carrying themselves like it was no cost. But it seems to be to me, in the last half a dozen years, that all of a sudden it's a big cost. And I think it started up north down there when they got that elaborate entertainment and other things, you know, and I think we can have the tour, but you know, we gotta be more careful how we gonna step into it. And I think it's still to be done down there. That way, like the way Tori is suggesting, you know, and I think if you're gonna get the right sponsors, we got over 3 years to get right sponsors in place. I think it could carry itself pretty easily.
So
maybe we should
let me
reconsider that motion then?
Let me kind of come at this from a slightly different perspective then. If Tori were to rescind or take his motion away, withdraw it, and have a discussion following in the first part of the year at some time, whether we would look at consideration of this event on a almost zero-based budget from ratepayers, if it's possible to achieve that. If it isn't, I think that's the time then to say, no, we're out, period. Is that a reasonable summation of your thoughts?
Because how did you do it, you know, like you've been there for a long time too, but I'm pretty sure at one time it was basically no cost to whatever, whichever municipality took it on.
It was, and, but then when you start paying $95,000 for entertainment, and 95 to 100,000 or a little better for somebody to coordinate the event, besides all the staff time you tie up. And, you know, you have a golf game beforehand, you do this and you do that. And, you know, a lot of people aren't going to that because of the cost of going to it. So if you were to make it more reasonable and, you know, not do some of the things that have been done in the past, I think you probably do it quite easily.
So I'm kind of glad that Councilor Authority brought that one up, and I think it's doable that way.
I don't think you need to feel like you have to entertain the world.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah. Larry?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I wonder, hearing the discussion, and I know no decision has been made on the motion yet, but if it's withdrawn or defeated or however you end up disposing of it, we could bring back another report to council, maybe with just some options and perhaps a slightly different look at the budget to give us, as best we can, greater predictability of what the future might hold, putting an event on. I don't recall how detailed the proposed numbers were in the first report that came to council a few weeks ago when the decision to proceed was made, but maybe we could relook at that and again come back and just try to refine it. And again, I think we're hearing clearly that hiring high cost entertainment just drives the cost up and doesn't make it very feasible. So if, again, once you've dealt with the motion on the floor, that would be something I think as staff we could certainly bring back for council's consideration. One more discussion.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
Just maybe a question to administration. Would, in administration's opinion, would we be able to pull the $50,000 from the 2020 budget, because once we come back in the new year, we are going to have that budget discussion, but yet at the same time not cancel our support, and as Larry suggested, come back with a plan as to how we tackle it, and then decide after that how we proceed.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. I think if we were back some financials from previous hosted tours here, probably ones from There hasn't been one in 2019, so 2018, 2017. That should give us some good reflective numbers essentially to look at. To not put 50,000 into this year's budget and then consider it again for 2021, that's definitely within the realm of council's decision making. I'm not in the planning stages and the discussions coming up to this. It was felt that the kind of the $150,000 to $200,000 mark was essentially what it cost previous municipalities in order to host this. So that was the number that was set essentially as a planning step to essentially see, we're going to put X amount of dollars aside every year in preparation for knowing these costs that are going to be incurred as part of this summer tour.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's just my opinion. I don't think it'd be wise to take the 2018 and support these agricultural summer tours, because the one that I went to in up north there, it was outdone, and just like you say, the $90,000 presentation that you ordered, like comedian that you had there, you got somebody leading the whole thing, and I think that we have capable people in with our staff that can probably do that, and so that would probably save us $150,000 to $200,000 right there. So it's really hard to take those ones that previously hosted it as an example. I think maybe what do we expect out of it? Should we have a little committee put together to see what we want in order to establish the financial capabilities? Just throw some out there.
Thank you, Councilor Vanderveen. I think it would be good to look at previous numbers. I mean, you can remove, it's just unlike any other budget, it's just like the $50,000 you're talking about this year, you can remove that portion out of it and say, okay, this is what we reasonably think is going to be the cost for entertainment per se. Or, for a portion of the tour coordinator, you remove that cost off there. I would hope that the budget that anybody else has done for this is actually line item by line item, and you can just say, okay, this is what our cost is going to be if we remove this and this item and this item. Or this is what we believe our cost, our reasonable cost or our threshold of cost is going to be for each of those different items. Okay.
I'll leave it open. So Tori, what do you think?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would ask that council consider me withdrawing that motion.
Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, you have the right to do that, so. So we should probably have a different motion in place, so, and I like the idea you come up with, to withdraw the money from the 2020 proposed budget, and to have a meeting to see where we go from there. If you wanted to make another one.
I would not do that.
Yes.
Would that be like staff bring a report back?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it would, someday we could maybe have a couple of our discussions and throw our ideas on the table as well. If we had kind of an idea where we want to go, and that gives you guys a much better idea what to look for. Otherwise, it could be, I didn't say that. No, I don't agree, I think that'd be a good idea.
I think in the new year, it'd be great to have a discussion and just kind of set an overall strategic plan for what council's expectations are as part of this. Is that going to be, I guess, for administration, the direction would be to bring back some financial numbers to start with. So that's a piece to look at. And then from there, honestly, that would have to be a larger discussion and maybe outside of council chambers with the whole council, and just saying, these are the things for consideration as part of that, and then to be able to go back and find additional costs so we can prepare the whole budget essentially.
Okay, so we have a new motion on the floor, and that is to withdraw the $50,000 from the 2020 budget and not to rescind the motion as the recommendation was.
Well, he took the motion out.
Yeah, I know, but we had a, the recommendation is to rescind.
Yeah.
So we're
Just wanna go ahead and rescind it.
we're not going to rescind.
We're not rescinding. Then we got it 50.
Is that comfortable with everybody? Is that what the idea was?
Is that what you want, Tori, out there?
Yeah, I would say to withdraw the $50,000 in the 2020 budget and direct staff to prepare a report or something of that nature.
The 50,000.
That won't have any effect on, with the interim budget anyways.
No, and I apologize, I was thinking that it
Yeah.
would have some impact with it.
Okay?
Can I read it? Can I
You're
just-
sure? That'd be an excellent idea.
So Tori, you withdrew your motion, and that was, okay, done. And then, that administration bring a report back to council in 2020 regarding hosting the agricultural service board summer tour 2023. And withdraw the $50,000 from the 2020 budget. We can finesse it, but is that the gist?
Yeah. I think so. Any further discussion on that? Call for the question, those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to move to the interim budget.
Okay, just, I guess, are we K1 here? So we had budget deliberations at the end of November and on December 10th, where we had some discussions. And based on those discussions, administration felt, as well as council, that it would be best to approve an interim budget at this point, moving into 2020, and bringing forward a final proposed budget for approval in January. According to the Municipal Government Act, expenditures cannot take place in the new year without some form of approval. So an interim budget allows for administration to continue operations into the new year until final budget approval has happened. So the recommendation is to approve the 2020 operating budget to be approved to ensure council operations can continue. Oops, I lost my motion, sorry. On top. Be approved in the amount of $43,565 in operating expenditures until the final 2020 budget is approved. So that is the
28 million, right?
28 million, did I say that?
Yeah.
I need more coffee. 28,043,565. That was the 2019 approved expenditures for operating. So we'll just carry those forward into 2020.
Any discussion on that? Any motion? Clause? To approve interim budget. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, the only thing I think we have left are the council activities for the month of November. So on November the 1st, I attended the Mayors and Reeds meeting, and there's still a considerable amount of discussion about Halo helicopter service. The other day at the Community Foundation, when they hand out their grant dollars for the year, the lady was there from STARS. So I asked her about kind of why are Halo and STARS kind of working together to kind of solve this issue, and she said, well, Halo is now operating with the same kind of helicopter we're giving up because you can't buy any parts for them anymore. I said, well, you should probably come to us and talk to us about how you see the future evolving for support for these organizations. So I think she's going to get in touch with Larry, and go from there. An emergency services meeting on the 4th. On the 6th, I met with Ann. On the 7th, we had county council. And the 11th to the 15th was the fall convention for RMA. On the 20th, I met with Ann again. On the 21st, we had county council. And November the 25th, 26th, and 27th, we had budget. On the 29th, went to Legacy of the Land banquet with Morris in Willow Creek. That was a very interesting evening, actually. They kind of celebrate their producers, and it was very well attended.
You bet.
And they did an excellent job of it. I think there actually would be something maybe we should probably think about doing sometime or other. And on the 30th, went to the Mayor's Prayers Breakfast. Ken?
November the 1st, Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce, Minister of Finance luncheon meeting. 4th was the emergency service update. November the 7th was council. 11 to 15 was RMA. And 21st is council, and then November 25 to 27 is budget meetings.
Dory?
Thank you. November 4th, we had an emergency services update. The 7th, county council meeting. 12th to 15th, we were up in Edmonton for the fall RMA convention. The 21st, county council. 22nd, the Coldell Parade of Lights. November 25th to 27th, we had budget meetings. And on the 30th, I attended the Coldell and District Emergency Services Awards and Banquet. The county honored three members for service, 2 5-year and 1 10-year, and it was another nice evening.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. November 4th had emergency services update. 7th was county council meeting. 12th to 15th attended the 2019 fall RMA convention. November 20th, we had our first Barron's County IDP meeting. 21st was county council meeting. 25th, 26th, 27th had 2020 budget meetings. And 29th attended the Nika Yuko Japanese Garden Winter Lights Festival, the opening night.
Okay, first Highway 320 Development Association, 4th Emergency Services, the 7th the County Council meeting, 12th to 15th of November, RMA Convention in Edmonton, 21st Council meeting, and the 25th and 27th budget meeting.
Morris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. November the 7th, county council meeting, and November the 25th to the 27th budget meetings, and November the 29th, MD Willow Creek Legacy of the Land banquet that I was getting I was gone for a while in November, and that's maybe why I can explain
You can explain what?
Okay, we'd like to know.
Boss?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. November 4th, emergency service update. November 7th, county council meeting. November 8th, SAWA meeting with Nathan Neudorf here in Lethbridge. The 11th, Picture Beauty Remembrance Day services, and the 11th to the 15th RMA convention. The 20th, Economic Development Lethbridge, and the 21st, County Council meeting, 22nd, SAWA meeting, and the 25th and 27th budget.
Thank you. Any questions for anybody?
Just a question on highway training, Mr. Chairman. Maybe somebody can elaborate, where are they standing and what are the chances in the financial situation we're in now with the problems, how far is that gonna go? I got my personal opinion about it, but
It is, they're just, they keep passed the government, but there's, no money, they got no money to do it, so they can't even get an engineer yet to do the paperwork or anything, so it's just, and that's been going for what, 30 years or something, 20-some years? Bill said.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's got past where it started, I don't even know, but Southwood took over it this year, up until now, then, the Cobell County was, or Cobell Council was, taking care of all the money, something, so, I don't know, and now they hired, a girl to try to lobby the government. So I don't know, maybe Ken can ask them, you put the meeting now.
Well, maybe we can wait for a while to answer that question.
Okay,
Okay?
just my views on it.
And, the next question is, to our rep on Salem. Where is that really gonna go? Like, I guess we give you guys a mandate, within a year, you're gonna have to come up with some solid, proposals. Within a year, that's what we, decided at one of our council meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Zinstra. I think we had quite a discussion about that here, and I don't know if you were present on that. I think you were not, or were you here when we discussed the whole Bayway issue of staying on, staying not on? We decided to stay on for the time being. And I got a meeting on Friday in Salem and Falkland, and we're, like I said before, we're close to having the final site, where the site's gonna be, where it is gonna be. So, as soon as I have any information on that, I will let you know, but for now, everything was a go-ahead, so I think, like I said, I think you missed out the discussion that we had in council here.
Give the money to build.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just an information piece for council, just back to the matter of our peace officer program. About 2.5 weeks ago, for the first time in its roughly 7-year existence of a CPO program at Lethbridge County, the county was audited by the Office of the Justice and Solicitor General. 2 former RCMP members or sergeants, I think they were, no surprise, who now are quasi-retired and working for that department of the provincial government, came down to Lethbridge County. They interviewed our peace officer, they interviewed myself, they looked at our written records, they looked at all of our computer records, et cetera, at our policies and so on. They had a couple minor recommendations, but all in all, they gave us kind of 2 thumbs up and high marks, and we're satisfied that Lethbridge County's peace officer program is following all the requirements set down by the provincial government, and we'll get a formal written response in that regard at some point in the coming weeks. So again, just so council's aware. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's it on the agenda. Other than I'd simply like to say, hope that everybody has a very happy holiday season and safe travels for anybody who's heading anywhere, and all the best in 2020. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ken? All in favor? Opposed?